Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joe Pisapia, and it is week one, which means it's time to stash some guys on the waiver wire because you're smarter than everyone else, and that's why you're listening to this show right here or watching us on YouTube. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And, of course, we're going to be hitting today not only some waiver wire stashes, but also having some debates about some starts and sits in the rankings, where Erickson has some guys a little different than Fitz, where Fitz has some guys a little different than Erickson. We're going to talk about that and even take some questions right here on the podcast. But it is so great, gentlemen, to have you here. We got our new fresh logos rocking everywhere. I've got a shirt. Pat's got a hat and a backdrop. Erickson's got the backdrop. We are representing the company today. Andrew Erickson, how good is it to realize that on Thursday we're going to have real football to talk about?
I'm excited. You know, I don't need to keep rehashing the same statistics over and over and over again that we've been talking about since June, because we're going to actually have new information, get to watch a game that actually matters, and we're getting more injury news. Things are just becoming even more spicy with this Travis Kelce injury. Is he going to play? So, you know, it looked like, all right, the Chiefs are going to win. Maybe it'll be close, but now it's like, the Lions going to pull off the upset? Where's the line moving? Oh, this is great. Couldn't ask for a better Thursday night setup.
Well, go over and check out Betting Pros because I got lots of feelings. I just dropped a video about that whole situation because that line's moved now to 5, but that's a different show. This is about fantasy. Fitz, I know the Kelce stuff has a lot of people already kind of shaking their boots early. It would not surprise me, you know, if he did kind of get out there on the field, but I guess the big question is when it comes to Travis Kelce, do you think that you should start him regardless if he is on that field or not?
Oh, man. Yeah, if he's on the field, you got to play him. You know, okay. It's not like wide receiver, running back, where you've got a wealth of good options behind him. Like the tight end position is still pretty gross after like Kelce and Mark Andrews, who's also dealing with an injury, apparently. So we got issues here. And I'm just going to take the blame for the whole Kelce thing. I was always sort of a don't draft a tight end in the first round guy in past years. This year, of course, I caved and drafted Kelce all over the place. So it's my fault. I'll fall on the sword. I jinxed it. Sorry, Kelce investors.
Drop your comments below on the YouTube channel. Share all your hatred and vitriol for Pat Fitzmaurice finally cracking on the tight end. But seriously, let's get to some of the waiver wire stashes here on the show. And obviously, you know, as we continue to go through these, you can follow all the content we have over here at FantasyPros.com. You can follow Fitz and Erickson, FantasyPros.com/Fitz. That's a great way to find all the articles that Fitz is getting you prepped for the season, because that's what we're doing here. So, Fitz, let's start with you. Give me a waiver wire stash here right before we get into real action that matters that people maybe should consider stashing on their bench.
Let's go with Titans running back Tyjae Spears. And I feel like Spears is sort of the definition of what a waiver wire stash should be. No real standalone value as long as Derrick Henry is healthy. But if anything were to happen to Henry, Spears would absolutely be a lottery ticket you could cash. He'd probably be a weekly low-end RB1 at worst. And he was good in the preseason. Like, he averaged 5.3 carries after averaging, I think, like 7 yards per carry in his final season at Tulane. He led all running backs who had at least 15 carries in the preseason with 4.73 yards after contact per carry. So pretty impressive. This guy runs hard. And if anything were to happen to Henry, Spears is a guy you would want to have in your back pocket.
All right, Erickson, this is a great time where people really don't pay much attention to the waivers. Sometimes they draft their team. They're like their team now. But do you see a few guys who's on your list maybe that's worth stashing now before next week when everybody's running to the waiver wire to maybe get them?
Yeah, I'm looking at the running back position. I think that running back's usually the best position to stash because it's all about, if this guy goes down, you could see another player taking on a bigger role where it's a little bit tougher at wide receiver and tight end. So for me, it's Joshua Kelley for the Los Angeles Chargers. So I think that he kind of established himself throughout training camp, throughout the preseason games as their direct backup to Austin Eckler coming off a really strong year. And he fits the new Kellen Moore offense in terms of his downhill running style. We saw in Dallas with Kellen Moore, he used two running backs all the time. He used Ezekiel Elliott and he used Tony Pollard. Now, do I expect that to be the case in LA? No, not necessarily, but we haven't seen a lot of this starting offense with Kellen Moore calling the shots because they haven't started any of their guys during the preseason. So if Joshua Kelley then comes out and is actually complimenting Austin Eckler more than we would think, oh man, like you want this guy on your roster. He plays on the Los Angeles Chargers offense, one of the top 5 offenses in the NFL. And you can have a guy that's one injury away from double-digit touches in one of the best offenses in the NFL, and he's not owned anywhere. Like, he is free on waiver wire because no one really saw him. He really hasn't had that splash game because Eckler's been healthy over the last 2 years. Is that going to continue? I'd be suspect about that just because of the way that Eckler is a little bit smaller of a running back. So I think Joshua Kelley, especially with the Los Angeles Chargers offense, kind of the selling point, I think he's a good guy to stash.
All right, so Joshua Kelley, Tyjae Spears, a couple of running backs here. Fitz, give me another player that's worth a stash possibly before we start kickoff.
Another running back, and for me, it's another rookie, Joe. It's Sean Tucker of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Tucker was an undrafted free agent, but he would have been drafted if not for a heart condition that was detected during a pre-draft physical. And, there were worse running backs drafted than Tucker. He had over 1,000 rushing yards each of his last 2 years at Syracuse, double-digit touchdowns in each of those seasons. And it's interesting because we didn't see the Buccaneers make any sort of move in free agency to bring in a veteran running back, or at least a prominent running back, to sort of share the load with Rachaad White. But we don't know if White can, take on some sort of massive workload. He had Leonard Fournette as a platoon partner last year, and maybe he needs another platoon partner this year. Tucker has reportedly ascended to number 2 on the depth chart. And, if indeed the Bucs do want to operate a committee this year, Tucker could play a prominent part in that. So I think he could have standalone value conceivably. And if anything were to happen at White, like Tucker could be immensely valuable.
Yeah. So you're fading Chase Edmonds over Sean Tucker, just for everybody, there's clarity out there. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's get to another guy. So far, 3 running backs. Erickson, you want to go for 4?
Yep, I'm going to go dive into the rookie pool here as well with Evan Hull, the rookie running back for the Indianapolis Colts. Look, I don't think that he's necessarily the week 1 play. I think that is still Deion Jackson, who I think is really more rostered more heavily because it looks like he's going to be the projected day 1 starter. But your stashing means you're playing the long game. And I think that Evan Hull is a better player than Deion Jackson is. It may not be in week 1 that it's apparent to the coaching staff and to those that are watching, but I think that he's better than Deion Jackson. And you can see from his college profile, 35% dominator rating, back-to-back seasons. He's a full-blown 3-down workhorse at college, forced over 100 missed tackles, was catching the ball out of the backfield, good athleticism, whereas Deion Jackson was undrafted for a reason. Like, he's just a guy. And I understand that he had that massive game last year against the Jaguars because Matt Ryan was just like peppering him with dump-off targets left and right. That's not sustainable. That's not a sustainable model for any offense. So I don't think Deion Jackson, he would be someone I look to sell if he does impress after week 1, because I think Evan Hull is the long-term bet. If Jonathan Taylor doesn't play, if he gets traded to a different team, I like Hull as that stash.
I feel like we're the Evan Hull podcast because I remember back in February, Thor and Debro were at Senior Bowl, and I remember they recorded a podcast there because they loved Evan Hull. And I think maybe 30 of the 40 minutes they spent talking about Evan Hull. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not much. But that's kind of how he got onto my radar. And he was the big takeaway guy for them. And then I watched him at the combine. A lot of us did. We were all very impressed. And he was the guy, if you recall, kept running every single ball that he caught, every single handoff he took, all the way to the end zone. And Rich Eisen and everybody were really kind of just looking at this kid and saying, look at this guy. Look at this. This is like throwback old school kind of guy. It would be great to see Evan Hull kind of get a bigger role here as time goes on. We'll see what happens for all those people who drafted Jonathan Taylor at various points this offseason. All right, give me a non-running back here, Fitz. I know we have a lot of running backs worth stashing. That's good. But is there anybody else non-running back that we want to target?
How about a tight end, Joe? How about Joe? How about Luke Musgrave of the Green Bay Packers? And Musgrave was reportedly just a revelation in Green Bay's training camp this year. Like, he just took that starting tight end role, seized it, and like they were even running jet sweeps to Luke Musgrave in training camp. So like they're excited about his athleticism, and why not? This guy was like a star lacrosse player in high school. He's a slalom skier. And he's got NFL bloodlines with his uncle Bill, who I believe was a quarterback and assistant coach in the league for a long time. So Musgrave was on the field for pretty much every snap Jordan Love took during the preseason. And Love played a lot more snaps than most starting quarterbacks because the Packers are trying to figure out exactly what he is and what sort of offense they have. You know, a lot of young pass catchers here. What we really like is that Musgrave ran a pass route on more than 80% of his snaps in the preseason, or more than 80% of Love's dropbacks. Mm-hmm. So he's not just out there blocking, he is involved in the passing game. And, with his size and speed, he can be a nice mismatch for the Packers. So I think he's going to be not really a stash. Like I think you could play him in week 1 against the Bears if you're hurting at tight end.
Now, in the offseason, Fitz, are you more of a slalom guy or more of a moguls guy?
Yeah, I just cannonball straight downhill.
Is that what it is?
I'm like a ski jumper, Joe. I like taking the big leaps off the ramp. So I'm Eddie the Eagle, baby.
I think Erickson's more of a hot cocoa in the cabin guy. I don't know. Is that true, Erickson? Or are you out there? Are you out there on the powder or no?
I shred a little bit.
You're a New Englander
on my snowboard. So yeah,
I may or may not shred a little powder. Yeah, you're a snowboard guy. You look cool. You know, your spiky hair. You look like somebody out of a Tony Hawk video game. Give me another guy, non-running back that's worth stashing at the waiver wire.
I'm going back to the same Green Bay Packers, except I'm doing wide receiver, looking at Jayden Reed. So
Okay.
Jayden Reed has kind of emerged as the clear slot receiver starting in the Packers offense. I really liked his college profile coming out. He was a second-round pick, which is the same as Christian Watson. You have Romeo Doubs, who's dealing with a lingering hamstring injury. We don't know what his status is for week 1. So, look, I think Watson is ultimately that big play guy in this offense, but I don't know if Watson is necessarily the move the chains guy, where he is racking up reception. So it could be Musgrave or it could be Jayden Reed that really is vacuuming those underneath targets in this offense, because it can't always just be Christian Watson catching bombs from Jordan Love. That's just not sustainable for an offense. So I think that Jayden Reed, especially given the injury to Romeo Doubs and given his draft capital, he was a top 50 pick. Like he had a lot of investment from this Green Bay Packers organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so far he has given them what they wanted. They're very clear with the Packers, like what they want to do on offense. They have 11 personnel. They have their starting 3 receivers, their number 1 tight end. And like, that's what they want to roll with. A bunch of young guys with Jordan Love. So yeah, there's a lot of upside taking shots on any of these players who could potentially emerge if it is not Christian Watson, or if Watson is to suffer an injury like last year.
The young and up-and-coming Green Bay Packers. Those usually not the words we put all together in the same sentence, but it's kind of fun. So Jayden Reed, Luke Musgrave, and then the running backs, Joshua Kelley, Tyjae Spears, Sean Tucker, Evan Hull. Those are the stashes here. Try to slide them through before anybody really notices. Put a buck on them. People are like, oh, wait, I didn't even realize the waiver wire was open. It happens all the time, everybody. Be proactive, not reactive. That way, come Monday, you're already sitting pretty for a buck, and you've got $99 of fab left, and they've got a whole bunch of problems, but you having that player is not one. See that? That's a little Jay-Z for you this morning. All right, let's get to the ranks, because game time is right around the corner. And by the way, speaking of game time, the Game Time app is the best way to get tickets for any game you want to go to. And Game Time is the official ticketing partner of the Fantasy Pros Fantasy Football Podcast. For the last amazing deals that you can get in the last minute here, you can go to Game Time this September all the way through the season. You can get tickets for your favorite football team, or not just football. You can go to baseball games too. There's playoffs right around the corner for baseball. Hockey and NBA are going to be here before you know it too. The Game Time app is there for you. Whether you want to go to concerts, whether you want to go to comedy shows, or even your favorite sporting event. So all you have to do is download the app and redeem that promo code FantasyPros, and you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, just download the Game Time app, put in that promo code FantasyPros, and you get the $20 off no matter where you live. Get out there, have some fun, see some football, go have a couple laughs at the comedy show. Download the Game Time app today. Again, last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. That sounds like a good combination. Now, when we're looking at the ranks here at fantasypros.com/rankings, sometimes the guys disagree, which is great. We love the disagreement here because it makes for good theater, and that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to put on good television. So let's start with a running back here as we're going to go through some of these rankings. Erickson, you've got James Conner ranked as RB21. The ECR is kind of with you. You're at 22 overall. And then Fitz, you've got him at 25, a little bit lower down the trough. Now, Erickson, I want you to talk about Conner, because my concern here is, although I know that James Conner is going to be that guy who's going to get the lion's share of the carries here, I have distinct concerns about this offense and the game script in this game, where they're going to probably be behind not only this week, but maybe most of the year. So how do you feel about this ranking where you have him here at 21? Because that still feels pretty confident to me.
Well, I'm confident because he's going to get all the volume. Like you said, lion's share, I'm looking at all of it. Like why is he going to lose out on touches to Keontae Ingram? James Conner is healthy right now. Like the biggest concern with Conner from redraft was like, okay, is he going to break down as the season progresses? It's week 1. Like if you're not starting James Conner when he's at his healthiest, then why did you draft him in the first place? So yeah, the matchup's not great against the Commanders, but again, it's still Sam Howell making his second NFL start. So weird things can happen. Maybe they can keep this game a little bit closer than the Vegas spread would indicate. And last year, we saw James Conner play 6 games without Kyler Murray. Average points per game, 21. 6 games without Kyler Murray last year. So, yeah, I get that the matchup's not great and the Cardinals suck, all those reasons, but he's going to get over 20 touches in this game. And what do we see in fantasy all the time? Volume is king, especially at running back. So right now with James Conner healthy, that's why I feel like he is in that top 20 fringe play as like a mid-range RB2 in week 1.
All right, let's go to you on James Conner here, Fitz. Your thoughts on, have Conner a little bit lower down the trough. Obviously, he's still kind of in that RB2 range for you, sir. You're still starting him, but what are your expectations?
Yeah, you might have no choice, especially if you're like me and went with a 0 RB build in a lot of leagues and wound up with Conner as your first or second running back. But my concerns are sort of the same ones you outlined, Joe, just the possibility of negative game script and like 20 carries, Erickson. I'm not sure if I can guarantee that. It's going to be hard.
20 touches.
20 touches.
Because he's going to be involved in the passing game too. Like he'll catch jump offs from Tune or whoever they have by quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, but what could short circuit Conner's week is if the Cardinals offense is just terrible. They can't sustain drives, pick up first downs, keep the chains moving. So then maybe that volume isn't there for him. Washington was 10th in DVOA against the run last year. It's not a good matchup, as Erickson mentioned. And, the Washington might be able to load the box if the Cardinals can't do any business through the air. So it's just not an ideal situation. I don't hate the idea of putting Conner in your starting lineup. I'm just not quite as high on him as Erickson and ECR.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned with Conner this week, but then again, I have massive concerns about the Cardinals. Another player that's up for debate. I know a lot of people have shares of Dalvin Cook, but nobody's quite sure exactly what to make of the situation here with Breece Hall, with him, both of them coming back from injuries respectively. So Erickson, this is another guy that you're higher on than Fitz. You have him at RB29, ECR's at 32, which is actually a little bit closer to Fitz at RB34. So Erickson, what's your case for Dalvin Cook? Is it just as simple as, hey, it's week 1, we know Hall is going to be eased back in? Is that basically it?
I mean, I think so. Like, why else would they bring Dalvin Cook in? Like, wasn't this the whole thesis of the play of drafting Dalvin Cook? Like, if you drafted Dalvin Cook, like, what did you think was going to happen? Like, you drafted him because you probably thought, okay, they're going to ease Breece Hall back in. That doesn't mean Breece Hall is going to be like an outright inactive player, that he's probably going to still be active on game days during the start of the year. But you drafted Cook because, hey, I'm punting off running back a little bit. I'm going to use Cook in the beginning of the year. So, yeah, that's why I have him inside my top 30 running backs. Think he can be a worthwhile RB3 flex play. And, I mean, the matchup I don't think is really that bad against Buffalo. I don't think Buffalo's run defense is anything that's like you should be afraid of. They lost Trayvon Edmonds in the offseason. I'm not afraid of their defensive line. They don't have Von Miller. He's coming back from an injury. And the Jets running backs were productive in 2 games against the Bills last year. The Jets offense was horrible last year. So, with 0 threats in the passing game. So, Zonovan Knight finished his week as the RB13. Michael Carter was the RB9 the week that he played the Bills. And that was not on, oh, they're the only guy in show, like the only guy in town. Like neither of those guys had like a bell cow workload, 12 carries for Carter, 17 carries for Knight. So could see Dalvin Cook easily putting up 70 rushing yards, scores a touchdown, and there you go. You got a top 24 running back. So yeah, for me, it's between Cook and Hall. I'll probably favor on the Cook side, just to think that he's healthier at this point.
Now, you've got Cook, well, let's say honestly, you both have him as a flex play, but obviously for you, Fitz, if it comes down to Cook and say a wide receiver 3 on a good offense, are you leaning that way this week? Because the Cook, we could easily see the Cook share start to go away if Breece Hall looks really good right out of the gate, despite whatever workload, quote unquote, we're concerned with. Yeah,
Cook is never going to be more playable than he is right now, probably. Mm-hmm. And yet I still don't want to play him, which is why I didn't draft him anywhere. I mean, he's the second best running back on the team.
Agreed.
Breece Hall's better. No question about that. We're going to see some of Breece Hall. So we just can't trust the Cook workload, even though, yes, it's probably going to be bigger now than it will be in week 10. Cook barely practiced with the team,
right,
and didn't play in any preseason games. Oh, and by the way, if you've been watching Hard Knocks, there's a very real concern that the Jets' offensive line is terrible. So, iffy workload, bad offensive line. I just don't want to play Cook this week.
Yeah, maybe Aaron Rodgers has done his homework a little bit more about that Jets O-line. Let's get to some guys that Fitzy on the running back side likes more than Erickson. Let's start with Alexander Mattison. Fitz, you've got him at RB19. Erickson's got him at 26. The ECR is with you, though, Fitz. So the force is behind you. RB19 over on the ECR. Again, you can check that out, fantasypros.com/rankings. You can see where all the expert consensus rankings are, help you make decisions with all of our tools too that we have. Your who should I start, the ranks tools, all of that good stuff. But here's a question for you, Fitz, because Mattison's workload seems pretty clear to me, and I think they're going to be up in this game. So I'm actually leaning towards really feeling pretty confident about Alexander Mattison being a top 20 back. And so are you. Are you seeing things the same way in terms of game script against the Bucs this week?
I am, Joe. And we know Mattison's not the most talented running back in the league, but a lot of times opportunity matters more than talent. And Mattison is a jack of all trades who does everything well enough. And based on everything we've heard from every Vikings beat writer so far, Kevin O'Connell is perfectly comfortable rolling out Alexander Mattison as his lead back this year. And we've seen Mattison make 6 starts at various times in his career. For those 6 starts, he's averaged 79.5 rushing yards and 36 receiving yards. It's 115 yards a game, 200-yard rushing games, 5 touchdowns in 6 games. Like, he's done it when Dalvin Cook has been out. So, as you said, looks like it's probably going to be a favorable game script with the Vikings favored by almost a touchdown against the Buccaneers at home. I think he's a really strong play this week.
All right. You've got him as RB26 Erickson, which is, again, kind of that fringe RB2. Pat seems a little bit more confident. Why are you seeing Mattison maybe more as a flex play, or maybe even somebody that if you had a really good wide receiver in a 2 wide receiver league and you had an extra third one that was really good, maybe you'd want to play over Mattison?
Well, I'm not as confident that he's just going to get this like insane workload. Like, I understand that's what beat reporters are saying, but beat reporters are wrong all the time on certain things. So it's like, I want to see this coaching staff give him the workload. We have not seen a Kevin O'Connell-led offense give him a solid workload. And the games that Fitz mentioned, his 6 starts, half of them were against the Lions. And those are the games where he was productive. Like, the Buccaneers defense is good. Like, they still have a lot of their players that were on that Super Bowl team that they have a really good run defense. Like, Vita Vea is still there. They drafted Tyjae Spears. I know he's dealing with an injury, but he's a mauler inside against the run. So, yeah, we talked about, no one ever starts a conversation about how good Alexander Mattison is because he's not that good. So, I don't think when he's not facing the Lions, like, I don't think that he's going to be that good. So, that's why I have him outside my top 24 running backs. Now, I'll be more than happy to come on the show next week and be like, they gave him 20 touches. I was wrong. Like, and he's got that workload all set up to himself, and he'll be a great pick. But as of right now in week 1, like, I'm not willing to just thrust him up the rankings because of what the beat reporters are saying when we literally haven't seen it at all. And Ty Chandler, I think, has looked actually pretty good during the preseason. And he's kind of carved out his way up the depth chart after some of the injuries to some of the other Vikings running backs. So those are my only hesitations with Mattison.
Okay, let's talk about Cam Akers, another guy that was, well, let's just say frustrating last season. That's probably a good way to put it. It's very political. We'll just not leave it at that. I don't want to tear any scabs for anybody who drafted Cam Akers high last year and was disappointed. But Akers this year, it looks like at least potentially a fresh start for him. Erickson, you've got him as RB19, but Fitz, you've got him all the way at RB16. The ECR is at RB18. So, Fitz, your expectations here week 1 for Cam Akers. Are we going to see a repeat of what happened last year where we all thought he was the running back and everything was going to be fine and then it all fell apart and was terrible for many, many weeks before the close of the season? Or are we finally going to get off on the right foot here with Akers in week 1?
Oh, Lord, I hope we get off on the right foot with him, Joe. I mean, it was really hard to have been an Akers stan all last offseason and then sit there and watch that home openers. He's sitting on the bench and Darrell Henderson is taking every snap. But we did, by the end of the season, see heavy volume for Cam Akers. Led the NFL in rushing over the last 6 weeks and ranked RB4 in half-point PPR scoring over that stretch. So you have to think he's going in as the incumbent. Yes, Kyron Williams is probably going to play on obvious passing downs and maybe get some change of pace work, a series or 2 here or there. But Akers is the lead guy. Seattle's a good matchup. They gave up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing running backs last year and the 6th most rushing yards to running backs. And you would think that with Kupp out for the Rams, that they would endeavor to have offensive balance to try to keep Matthew Stafford upright and mix run and pass. So maybe there's even some early down receiving upside for Cam Akers with Kupp out of action. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not wildly confident about having him as a high-end running back too, but I'm confident enough in starting him in week 1.
Okay. Your confidence in starting him week one, Erickson, is still there because you got him as RB19. So he's a starter for you. But I guess the real question is, what are the expectations for him in week one?
Yeah, I think that the expectations for him are, okay, he's going to get double-digit carries, going to post some solid rushing production. So I think that there is a floor that he can offer you. But then outside of that, okay, what's the touchdown appeal in an offense with the Rams without Cooper Kupp? Like, are they going to move the ball? So, like,
right.
Does he have a lot of touchdown upside? Probably not. Okay, receiving. What if they fall behind? How much is he running routes? Or is it Kyron Williams? So I think that the rushing is locked and loaded, and hopefully he can rip off a big run or two against a beatable defense. But don't know where the touchdowns are, have no idea how he's going to be used in the receiving role. And then there's always that like 5% chance that Sean McVay is like, you know what? I just like Kyron Williams more today. Like, I'm just going to play him instead of Cam Akers because that just happens. So there are some pitfalls and holes I can poke into Akers that have me a little bit lower on him and really more as a back end RB2 that I think you're going to get at least rushing production from him at minimum, especially because they're going to have to run the football to just try to move the ball on offense without Kupp. But I really look at him more as a floor play. And if he was like an RB3 on my roster, I would probably lean towards a receiver with a boomer bust profile if I wanted more upside versus Akers, who I think is really more of a floor play in week one.
All right, let's switch gears here from the ranks discussion from the running backs to the wide receivers, because I know that's a hot topic as well. And I want to find out what's next for Michael Pittman Jr., because we all love this wide receiver. And this new segment is brought to you by Miller Lite. Here's to what's next. And Michael Pittman is the subject here, because I don't think any of us really truly know what's coming next year for Michael Pittman Jr., because Anthony Richardson certainly looked rough around the edges at times in preseason. He is a rookie. He is still inexperienced. He is very exciting to watch regardless because of the talent that he offers potentially. But Michael Pittman, Erickson, you've got at wide receiver 33. Fitz has got him ranked at wide receiver 40. The ECR, though, Erickson, is even higher than you at 32. So what's your confidence level here going into week one with Michael Pittman?
I mean, he's the clear-cut wide receiver one on his offense. So I think that in itself lends it. Okay, he's in the fantasy wide receiver 3 conversation. I don't think the matchup is, oh, you can't start him against the Jaguars. Okay, well, last time he played the Jaguars, he went 13 for 134 yards on 16 targets. So clearly he can beat the defensive backs that are playing him on the other side of the football against Jacksonville. You're expecting negative game script if Jacksonville is going to put up points against the Indianapolis Colts. So yeah, it's just a wild card because he could get 10 targets and he could catch like 3. Because we don't know how accurate Anthony Richardson's going to be. And we kind of saw that in the preseason games where Michael Pittman had like a 7-target game, caught 2 passes for like 23 yards. So like that's the scary thing with Pittman is he could still just be the alpha, but the passes are just way off. So he's not actually converting at a high rate. So I think he falls in that wide receiver 3 category just because I do think that there's going to be target volume for him. It's a negative game script.
There you go. That's potentially what's next for Michael Pittman Jr. in the eyes of Andrew Erickson. And with a cold Miller Lite in your hand, that should be really what's next too. You watching these games. So summer just doesn't taste great. It also tastes like Miller time. And there's still some weeks left of summer because I'm willing it to happen. So get Miller Lite delivered right to your door. Visit MillerLite.com/fantasypros. That's MillerLite.com/fantasypros. Or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly, though. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories. That's it. 3.2 carbs and 12 ounces. It's Miller time, baby. Now, let's go to you, Fitz, about Mr. Michael Pittman Jr., because maybe you don't feel like it is Miller time for him. You got him at wide receiver 40, a little bit more daunting, a little bit more up in the air in terms of if you even want to start him in some leagues. So talk to me about your concerns. I know Erickson sort of voiced some of them. Hey, just because you're getting targets doesn't mean they're quality targets. It seems like you're kind of thinking things the same way.
Poor Michael Pittman. He goes from playing with a dusty Matt Ryan to playing with a rookie quarterback who's only had 1 season as a college starter and, is known more for his running than his passing. I like Anthony Richardson a lot. I'm not bashing him, but we know it's not going to be pretty for him as a passer early on, getting his first taste of NFL defenses. And like, what if the Colts are ridiculously run heavy? Like 2 years ago when Shane Steichen was the Eagles offensive coordinator and Jalen Hurts was in his first season as a starter, the Eagles were ridiculously run heavy. Like they ran on 56% of their offensive snaps from week 6 on that year. And there were stretches where they were running on like 60% or more of their offensive snaps. They were basically a Big Ten team. So if you're getting that kind of offense, like I don't want any wide receiver in that sort of offense. So I like Pittman a lot. one of these days, hopefully it's going to be with Anthony Richardson as he evolves as a passer. Pittman's going to be in a better situation, but this is not the year.
Yeah, it's a tough sell, and you're right. Poor Michael Pittman, but hopefully things will get better for him over the next few seasons. So maybe there's a good chance to buy low in Dynasty. I don't know. Fitz and Bogman hosting that Dynasty podcast. I know it's on hiatus now that we're in the season, but I'm sure I have a feeling, Fitz, it's going to be a hot topic of conversation maybe come February where you guys start that back up again and start to talk about Pittman's value. Jordan Addison's value this week. Erickson, you see it as wide receiver 37. Fitz sees it as wide receiver 42. ECR is right with you, Erickson, again at 37. So Addison, again, he is a rookie. He is working his way into the NFL, working his way into the offense. You saw a ton of targets, obviously, last year, a ridiculous amount to Justin Jefferson, and a lot to TJ Hawkinson. Are there enough here still to warrant a wide receiver 37 ranking this week for Jordan Addison, the rookie, Erickson?
I mean, it depends on your risk tolerance. I could see Addison going out there, catch 2 passes for 23 yards, which is just the number that keeps popping in my mind when I think about bad performances by wide receivers.
I just got chills when you said that right now. And I was like, yeah, that actually sounds really spot on to me. I don't know. Continue, though. I do want to hear more.
So it's entirely possible where this game doesn't shoot out because Tampa Bay is just trying to drag it through the mud. They're trying to slow things down. They do have a much better defense than they have offense. So I talked about the Buccaneers run defense. I think it's still pretty good. I think their secondary still has a lot of good pieces in it. So they roll coverage to Justin Jefferson. It's like, all right, well then you could see Addison getting a decent amount of looks in the offense. And TJ Hawkinson's missed a bunch of time during training camp with he had some weird injury, and then he had a back injury, and then he had the contract thing. So he really hasn't been practicing a lot either. So how fast is he going to come out the gates? And then we just recently got the depth chart unofficially by the Vikings where Addison's now listed behind KJ Osborne. So there's a lot of scenarios where it's okay, is he even the number 2 receiver now, or is he number 4? So again, if I'm being more risk averse, I think I would like to just see him play a week with the offense with all the starters out there. I think that's fair. But if you need some upside, I mean, Jordan Addison is still playing in a dome. He's a first-round pick. And if he gets one-on-one looks because they're rolling coverage of Jefferson, that was the thesis on Addison. That's why you wanted to draft him in the first place, because he's going to have weeks where he blows up because the team is just trying to start Justin Jefferson. So that's my take on Addison at wide receiver 37.
Yeah. Fitz, did it seem like during that conversation Erickson was having with himself that he's going to lower him in his rankings? Because it feels like it. It feels like Erickson was almost talking himself into lowering him. You've got him at wide receiver 42, so you're already there. Is that 2 for 23 line staring you in the face as well, potentially?
Perhaps, Joe. And in fairness to Erickson, I mean, wide receiver 37 is definitely not, diving in head first on him for week 1.
True.
And that's kind of it. I'm not pounding my shoe on the table demanding that people keep Addison out of their starting lineups this week, but I'd like to get a show me game first from him. We know Justin Jefferson is going to soak up a ton of targets. Hawkinson is there too. Not sure about the health, but if he is reasonably healthy, he's probably going to be heavily involved in, Mr. I'm higher on the depth chart. KJ Osborne is probably going to be involved. So I just wonder what sort of target upside that leaves for Addison. Don't hate him, the young route running savant. I'm excited about him, but I just don't know if I want to roll him out in week 1.
Well, speaking of potential targets here, Courtland Sutton, certainly with Jerry Jeudy injured, has at least a pathway. I mean, Marvin Mims is there too. Yeah, okay. He's a rookie. We'll see what he's capable of. But Sutton has, been there for a while. He worked with Russell Wilson last year. I know it's a new offense, but you've got him at wide receiver 31. That's where ECR is as well. Erickson's got him all the way at 40, though, which is, I think, still some remnants from their breakup in the offseason. The two of them had a lot of drama. You could watch it all unfold on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe. So it seems like Sutton is an easy start for me this week, Fitz, and you kind of seem to be seeing things the same way, where there might be some target opportunity that makes him a very viable wide receiver 3.
I know, man. I mean, come on, Erickson. Are you really that bitter about the way Courtland Sutton betrayed you last season?
I think he is.
I mean, no Jerry Jeudy. Juicy home matchup against a bad secondary. The Broncos' number 2 receiver is a rookie playing his first NFL game, and you're not even ranking Sutton as a wide receiver 3. Don't hold grudges, Erickson. Come on.
Come on, Erickson.
It's because the reason why he's not higher is because I like Marvin Mims more. That's why. Like if the Broncos had not drafted Marvin Mims, I would view Sutton totally differently.
Why the rookie in the first week over the established veteran who's put up good seasons? Again, playing devil's advocate, but I just want for all the people out there that might have both and maybe one spot to start them. You've got Mims higher than Sutton is what you're saying, correct?
Yes.
Okay, make that argument why. I want to hear it.
Because Sean Payton traded up to get Marvin Mims. Like, this is their featured piece. Courtland Sutton was from the last regime. They wanted to trade Courtland Sutton in the offseason, but they couldn't because all their receivers kept getting hurt. They couldn't move him, and it was like, we're stuck with this guy. So, yeah, if we're making bets on, all right, who's going to get more targets? Okay, yeah, probably he's going to be Sutton, but who's going to do the most with his targets? Marvin Mims, if he gets a one-on-one look against Marcus Peters, you think Sutton's going to beat him for an 80-yard touchdown? No, it's going to be Marvin Mims, the 21-year-old with wheels. That's going to burn Marcus Peters for a long touchdown against the Raiders. So that's the way I see it. I think Marvin Mims has more big play upside, and I think Sutton is more of a floor play because I think, yeah, you can probably lock in his targets, but the thing with him is he doesn't score touchdowns. Like, it's just the worst thing about him. Like, him and Russ don't have a good connection in the red zone, where Mims doesn't need to be in the red zone to score. So I like Mims.
Before we get to the listener mailbag, we got one more wide receiver to talk about, and perhaps one of the most controversial ones. Michael Thomas is back, at least for now, at least for week one. So, Fitz, you've got him at wide receiver 36. I think a very diplomatic ranking, if you will. Wide receiver 40 right now over on the ECR as Fantasy Pros. But Erickson, you've got him at 49. Erickson is not having it. Fitz, you think he is startable, he is viable, and hey, if you drafted him, this might be the one time you get to start him all year and hope for the best. So I know this is not a ringing endorsement necessarily at wide receiver 36, but you are telling everybody he's viable either as a wide receiver 3 in 10-team leagues or in 12-team leagues as a potential flex play. So why is that in week one? Are you ready to go back to the Michael Thomas well?
I think he's very viable in week one. Erickson's week one ranking for him, wide receiver 49, that's close to my draft ranking for Michael Thomas, but that bakes in all sorts of injury risk, which we know Michael Thomas has a lot of. But he's healthy right now. Like, he is healthy right now. No, he's not going to catch 100 passes this year, even if he stays completely healthy. I mean, Chris Olave is just too good for that to happen. But Thomas can be a useful fantasy asset as a complementary possession guy for Derek Carr. And with Thomas in a home matchup against a really bad Titans pass defense, I mean, the Titans are a run pass funnel. Like, they're really good against the run, really bad against the pass. They gave up more fantasy points to opposing wide receivers than any other team last year. Like, this is actually a pretty good spot for Thomas in week one.
You know, it's a quarterback upgrade. And last year in spurts, you saw Michael Thomas, you know, at least have a nose for the end zone again. Erickson, that's my concern with your ranking, is that it's so low that if he does get in that end zone, he's probably going to finish closer to where Pat's talking about wide receiver 36.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you draft Michael Thomas, like Pat said, like, you got to, this is when you start him. And I wasn't drafting Michael Thomas, so like, I don't have this problem because I don't think he's going to stay healthy.
But you have to rank him because you work at Fantasy Pros, so you still got to rank the guy.
All right, fine. I'll move him up because he's healthy.
48.
Like,
there you go. From 49 to 48. We did it, Fitz. We did it. Now you don't have to take your shoe off and pound the table, because God knows when you do that in meetings, it gets really nasty really fast. But in all honesty here, Erickson, like, if you did draft Thomas, to the point we're all making, he is, again, in quotation marks, healthy. So I'm going to do the quotation marks. And this is an opportunity where, hey, you know, first game out, everyone's very, you know, ready to go. Everyone's had time to prepare. Why not start him this week, right? I mean, I guess, who are some of the wide receivers you have ranked ahead of him? Because if you are looking in this 40 range, it's got to be some questionable guys, no?
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure. Like, he's around players that I just projecting for decent volume. I think Nico Collins is going to get a lot of volume for the Texans. Okay. Jacoby Myers, Juju, like, guys that I'm not really super excited to play, but it's like someone has to catch the ball when the team drops back to throw. Like, okay. So no, Michael Thomas.
That is true.
Yeah, so I mean, Michael Thomas kind of fits into that category, but it is a good point to bring up that, like, when he was healthy last year, he was productive until just he wasn't healthy anymore. So again, I made the argument for James Conner with this exact rationale where it's like, this is when he's healthy. So if the injuries is what was shying you away from the player or made you draft the player at a discount, well, this is where you take advantage of it. Like, there's no point in drafting Michael Thomas at the discount and then not using him when the reason you were discounting it was because of the injury. And week one is when we're going to see these guys mostly at their healthiest. So yeah, I will tweak the rankings and move Michael Thomas up.
And make sure, everybody, you have your leagues all synced to my playbook, so you can go look at all the tools there. Who should you start? Also, you can go to fantasypros.com/rankings, see all the rankings, where all the different experts have them, and make your decisions off of that, and the who should I start tool and all the tools we have there. So sync your leagues to my playbook. That way you're prepared for all this. Real quick, before we go, a little listener mailbag from our Discord, fantasypros.com/chat, free to join. But of course, if you're premium at Fantasy Pros, you can upgrade and get access to stages, access to AMAs, and a whole lot more. And you can only do that by going to fantasypros.com/premium and upgrading. Also, this is from, the question is from B Wannabe300. Drop Tank Bigsby, for Ty Chandler and half PPR. Erickson, is that a move you want to make? Do you want to drop Tank Bigsby for Ty Chandler?
I do not, and I don't even like Tank Bigsby. So
there you go.
Yeah, you want to keep him.
There you go. Fitz, how do you feel about this one? Same?
Yeah, if Erickson, the Bigsby basher, doesn't want to do this move, how could I possibly want to do this move? Yeah, I mean, I just think draft capital suggests that Bigsby is the better back. And we really don't know what Ty Chandler is yet. Both guys in kind of squishy number 2 running back situations. But, I think Bigsby is in the slightly better offense and, just has the better profile.
Real quick before we get out, Joshua Kelley, Evan Hall, Tyjae Spears, Sean Tucker. Would you drop Bigsby for any of those guys, Fitz? On your stash list, or are we getting now real close and dicey?
Yeah.
Erickson, how about you?
I would not.
You would not. Still keeping Bigsby. How about you, Erickson, real quick?
I would rather have Spears, and I'd rather have Kelley.
Spears and Kelley over Bigsby. There you go, Wannabe. Hopefully that helps you out there. And again, if you need more help, we're always out there. You can follow us on X. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, fantasypros.com. That is where you get all of the rankings, all of the articles, everything you need. I want to thank our sponsors of today's show, including Game Time. Don't forget, that is the place to get tickets. Download the Game Time app and use that promo code FANTASYPROS to get $20 off your first order. And, of course, Miller Lite. Drink responsibly and get your Miller Lite delivered right to your door. MillerLite.com/FantasyPros. That's the way to do it. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For Pat Fitzmaurice and Andrew Erickson, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next.